guys were going at it. It
All
was
right, we
classic.
are live now. Greetings, Yinzers and non-Yinzers alike. Welcome to Black and Gold Central, a special NFL Draft edition of Black and Gold Central here on the Pro Football Central Radio Network. As you can see, I am sporting my Steelers Hawaiian shirt here. Okay, a very spring-like shirt because traditionally, when they held the NFL Draft in April, you know, it would be really and they had it on a weekend. It'd be really the first bright, sunny day of the spring, and us hardcore football fans would be stuck inside, watching the NFL draft. But at least here in the New Jersey outpost of Steeler Nation, these last 2 days have been kind of cloudy and gray. So we're sitting there watching the draft, and there's not much of a temptation to go outside. And another person who isn't outside right now is our guest on the show today. And he is Rudy Reyes, interviewer and blogger for 970 ESPN, and he's also a sportscaster on Steeler Nation Live, SteelerNationLive.net. Welcome to Black and Gold Central, Rudy.
Hey, thanks for having me. I certainly appreciate your time that you've taken out to do this today. How's your day going?
Pretty good so far. You know, who needs more than 4.5 hours of sleep, really?
Not me.
I wonder if the Steelers are sleeping over at their draft headquarters tonight. I don't know.
Maybe we'll have to get them. Maybe they have some Fermenties and some coffee to help them wake up and throughout the day, day two.
Are there any coffees that are really native Pittsburgh coffees? I know Pete's Coffee is really big in San Francisco. I'm trying to think. Do you know if there's any brand of coffee that they make in Pittsburgh? Yeah.
To my understanding, I can't answer that question. I don't know. I don't know, but I know that you can get some great Starbucks just about anywhere. So maybe they needed a 4-shot or something.
All right. You know what? I am going to. I have too many things open on my computer, and I am going to. If you could bear with me for a second, I'm going to try to close some windows here because I was actually kind of hearing some stuff that I really didn't want to hear. So I tried to be as smooth as possible there in shutting up the 87 other windows that I had. So hopefully it's just a one-on-one Mike and Rudy conversation here. My first question for you, Rudy, and by the way, the Steelers are already on the clock in the second round here. Who's your gut reaction, Rudy, when the Steelers chose Ohio State linebacker Ryan Shazier?
Ryan Shazier was the unsexy pick, the one that nobody ever seen coming, the one guy that's going to bring the Blitzburg back to Pittsburgh. This guy is by far probably the most fastest linebacker on the Ohio State line. It was a shock. Everybody wanted a cornerback. Everybody wanted a wide receiver because Big Ben was promised. The guy has a very high football IQ. He's quick. He knows how to break through any type of blocks from the offensive line. He emanates the ultimate Steelerology, as I like to call it, that most linebackers really need to have. And when you set him next to Timmons and you have him in sub packages, I honestly believe that not only can he penetrate, but goes from the opposing quarterback. So I was shocked, but I totally understood that's what we needed because we have an aging defensive line up front.
What would you give? What letter grade would you give the pick?
Overall, by the Steelers, I mean, knowing the passing of Bill Nunn, who built one of the Steelers championship rosters. To be quite honest with you, I give that on a scale of 1 to 10. I'd say that's a high number 2, right behind the pick of cornerback, which is what we will need to make come this round today.
Okay. If you were going to apply a letter grade to the to the Ryan Shazier pick in the first round, what letter grade would you give it?
I would give it a solid A minus.
Okay, okay. Uh, Now, which in the second and third round, which is taking place tonight, what positions would you like to see the Steelers address, and who are some of the players at those positions who you'd like to see the Steelers pick?
Well, as far as the secondary is concerned, because again, everybody is so concerned about those secondary positions, I'll go with Brian Dixon out of Northwest Missouri State. I would also go with Pierre Desir. I had the pleasure of interviewing Pierre directly, and the gentleman has the physicalities. He can turn his hips at will. He's got a great reach. He's extremely physical down the line. I would probably say in the second round you're going to see a cornerback picked. My best guess would be a cornerback of either one of those gentlemen because of their physicalities. Brian Dixon being at a 4.85, Pierre Desir coming out of a D2 college, the Steelers are going to have their hands full trying to figure this out when it's all pushing, and coming to shove by the 15th pick.
I'd be a little worried taking a Division II corner in the second round. The Steelers did that with Ricardo Coakley back in 2004.
Right.
So I mean, do you feel comfortable with the Steelers? You don't think that would be a reach if they took either of those corners in round two?
No, not at all. I mean, you have both Pierre Desir, both Brian Dixon, very physical, very tall. Dixon has the ability to add both to his frame. He's a good straight line. He knows how to do a lot of great things. He has flashes. I mean, you can go down the field and the guy's a competitor on every single down. And he does have free safety experience. So, Pierre Desir also has different types of experiences at the cornerback and strong safety positions. Both guys can play equally just as well. Brian Dixon's got 32 and 5/8 arm length. I mean, the guy's just huge. He can catch things that probably most cornerbacks cannot. Very fast, very fluid. If for some reason he doesn't get picked out, I expect him to be involved in the free agency market.
Whew, okay. Well, what about how about in round three? The Steelers they don't pick in round three until the 33rd pick because they have a compensatory pick at the end of the third round.
Right.
So who do you think the Steelers should target if they do go cornerback in the second round? Who do you think they should target in round three?
For a target in round three, I would honestly say now, mind you, this draft is probably the deepest draft since the Steelers championship draft back in the 70s, and of course, with Joe Green and all things considered, that has to be looked at prior to making any pick. Understanding where you've been historically pick-wise will lead you into the right direction. If you're going to go with any type of defensive player, someone that can learn is going to be, Nate, or I should say Nat Burhay. Now, this guy is out of California. He's got a great skill set. He knows how to read. He knows how to react quickly. He's very energetic on every single down. He's a quick, a fast, and balanced player off the line. He knows when to excel. He's got great hip movement. He's got great reaction. I would say go with the strong safety because again, this is such a deeply routed draft when you're referring to defensive players. Offensive, not so much. Of course, Manziel went to the Browns yesterday as one of the closing picks in round one, as well as Teddy Bridgewater. Defensively, it's where we really need to get younger, stronger, faster, more agile. So I truly believe that if you go to a strong safety, you're able to sub him out between Polamalu and Mike Mitchell, which we acquired from the Carolina Panthers. So I would probably go with Nate Burhay out of San Diego State University.
Okay. Yeah, you seem to be going with some sleepers there in here in rounds 2 and 3. Um, what about defensive line? Is that something? Is that more of a day 3 thing? Round 4 and later. It seems they seem really depleted on the defensive line with Ziggy Hood and Al Woods gone and Brett Kiesel still in limbo. Can they address that at some point in this draft?
Well, it's definitely going to be addressed. I truly don't know explicitly because, again, the Shazier pick, again, was not the sexy pick. Nobody thought, no one, not one person thought at any point whatsoever that they were going to pick Shazier out of Ohio State. It was improbable at its very best. So to address the defensive line, they're going to have to look nice and deep. And in order to find that, again, you have to look at who you have, who's aging, who's getting older, who's had more injuries. Of course, we lost Lamar Woodley out for a year. He's injury prone, in my opinion, and hence he went over to the Raiders. When it comes to stopping the run, whether it be at a 4-3, 3-4, a nickel, you want to have someone who's extremely versatile, who can pop off the line, who knows exactly what needs to happen. And with Shazier, you're going to get that pressure up front, again, preventing that quarterback from getting that ball deep into the secondary zone. So with that being said, this draft is so rich. Like, it is so rich that we have to look at everything that we've gone to, everything that we've, where we're headed to, and ultimately we're going to be able to find that a player like Cameron Fleming is going to come up very big for us as we head into the latter parts of the rounds, 4, 5, respectively. I had not prepared a complete draft, but I do have a bunch of sleepers on it, to be honest with you. And the reason for that is that I believe that with the work ethics, I mean, the gentlemen that I've had the pleasure of interviewing, for example, I have interviewed Nick Williams of the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's coming off of a knee injury. You have a lot of great players that are unknowns that come from your Minnesota State universities and have not had the acknowledgement. Kevin Van Voorst, kicker. The guy's got a leg. He's 26 years old. The guy can stick it down, very deep in the 67 to 72 yard marker. I mean, how could you not want someone like that who completely knows what it's like not to have distractions, on the while he's in the NFL, much less in college. Yes, he's older, but that means he's more experienced, and that also means that could be someone that I find as a sleeper in one of the compensatory picks heading into the later rounds.
God, I hope they don't pick a kicker, at least not until the 7th round. Who are some guys who the Steelers should stay away from tonight in the 2nd and 3rd rounds?
I would say stay away from the flashy. Steelers have never been flashy. They don't pick flashy players. They never have, and they never will. Again, there are a lot of sleepers in this draft. As far as looking in the later, I'm having some computer fluctuations.
All right.
So when you go into the deeper rounds, you want to look at those. Let me just dive into this real quick, and I'm trying to become more fluent with why my computer's not acting correctly, but I do apologize about that. So you want to go with players out of the Alabama zone. Like, for example, you go into the Southeast. I would probably stay away from. There's so many players. Some got picked last night, but the majority of them, I really can't. To be honest with you, I really don't know of one particular player that the Steelers should stay away from, other than to generalize it to say that they should stay away from those that have had massive amounts of injuries, that have not performed or came back to the college level in their junior and or sophomore, senior years, respectively, or even at a high school. Because what's going to happen is those injuries may creep back up into the NFL. You've paid millions and millions of dollars for this guy, and here he is, completely washed out because he's done. I mean, look what happened to David DeCastro. He started for the Steelers. He got rolled up on by one of his offensive tackles, and he was out. He was out for the remainder of the season. As far as grading those particular players to stay away from, I would say any player that's below maybe a 4.85 out of an overall 10, because though they may not either have the physicalities, they may not have the arm length, the speed, the hip movement, the fluidity's not there right off the line. So stay away from those types of players. And again, it's a very crying shame when you lose someone like Bill Nunn, who has done so much for the drafting classes from his tenure. And so when you're talking about drafting and who do we draft and how do we draft, hopefully he had left a legacy behind him enough to where the rest of the Steelers crew and drafting and scouting things of that nature would completely be aware of who to stay away from based on. So that's where I would start.
Yeah, and this is the last draft really where the Steelers have Bill Nunn's input, unless there are some reports from him on players who are going to be eligible, next year. But yeah, they really there's another reason. There's many reasons why the Steelers really need to hit this 2014 draft out of the park. Among them, the fact that this is really the last one where they have full input, from Bill Nunn, and maybe not everyone out there knows it, but Bill Nunn was really instrumental in the Steelers' 1974. Draft. He, players like John Stallworth and and Donnie Shell. He scouted players at a lot of the traditionally black colleges that most of the teams didn't know about at the time, and he was still going at it at 89 years old. Working on this draft. So. Good things seem to happen to the Steelers in drafts ending in 4. There was 1974, got Ben Roethlisberger in 2004, and now it's 2014. So hopefully they can maintain that tradition. Do you see any surprises today in rounds 2 or 3? Steelers, any potential surprise picks like they did to us in round 1?
You know what? Again, I'm going to go with the sleepers. Those guys seem to have the edge. The Steelers were in contact with Pierre Desir, did not pull him in for any type of workout. Ultimately, they said that, this guy's good enough. We don't need to take him out to dinner. We don't need to buy him a Primanti's. We don't need to do all these various things to help show that we're interested in a player. All they did was contact the agent, discuss with the agent, and in turn, it would not surprise me at all in any capacity to pull up Desir. He's not only a great player, but a very well educated man as far as the football IQ is concerned, and that's someone that you really need to have on and in that secondary, especially with Dick LeBeau and the way he likes to dial up the defenses and the sub packages, because he can absorb that information, take it, and utilize it to his advantage. And Dick LeBeau, make no mistake, this gentleman's been around a very long time, Hall of Fame player, not only as a player, but he will get in as a coach, and I can almost guarantee first ballot because he knows what to do with these players. He's not going to have them clipboarding. They're only going to be on the sides for a very limited amount of time. We had starters last year that were supposed to not start at all, but they ended up starting because, well, we needed the next man up, and sure enough, we found that in quite a few players. And so with that said, I would say that they would go with the sleepers, and Pierre Desir being one of them.
Okay, yeah, and you're right. I mean, after 2 straight 8-8 seasons, I don't know if you agree with me, Rudy, but I'm so sick of this. Oh, Steelers defensive players never start in their first year. Well, you know what? It's time that they really need to start making an instant contribution. They don't have the luxury of waiting anymore. Especially for defensive players. Do you agree with that?
I would say that the conditioning has a lot to do with what injuries are occurring throughout the regular and hopefully after going back-to-back 8 seasons, we can get into the playoffs with such a swagger to be the masters of our own destiny. So conditioning is a huge part of it to keep players upright, including Ben Roethlisberger as many times as he was hit last season. And again, part of that is due to his style of play. As far as not preparing or not being prepared, or in lieu of being prepared and ready for the season, it starts in May. The voluntary workouts start in May. There's pictures floating around of LeGarrette Blount, one of the newest Steeler additions as a running back. I call them the Killer Bees, Bell, Blount, and Ben. So I call them the Killer Bees because they're going to be such a major backfield aspect to the offensive line. Defensively, on that side of the ball, I believe conditioning has everything to do. Not only on the field, but off-field and non-mandatory workouts will have every bit of an impact on a player's ability to stay healthy.
Okay, we're going to shift to the offense for the last question, Rudy. Hopefully it's not too much of a curveball, but it's something that's been talked about a lot, a little bit about the offense now. And it's a two-part question. First of all, how important is it? Ben Roethlisberger has pretty much done everything except take out a personal ad for a tall wide receiver. All right, and how important is that to the Steelers' offense? And in the second part of that question is, who do you see if they are going to take a tall receiver? Who do you see them taking? Either in this on day 2 or on day 3.
Well, to answer the first part of the question, to be honest with you, we have a lot of weapons, and weapons that weren't really utilized in this past season, or even the season before. I mean, you have Antonio Brown carrying the majority of the weight. He was 1,000 yards all-purpose receiver. He mixed that up with Emmanuel Sanders. Of course, as you know, Emmanuel Sanders dropped key balls and key passes that he really needed to catch to sanctify the game, to pull it down to where it was only a field goal. And of course, with the last game on the line against, I believe it was against Cleveland, Antonio Brown couldn't stay in bounds, and ultimately the clock ran out, and that was the game. It was done. As far as Derek Moy involved in the process and getting him involved in the process, that will be done this year. I guarantee it. You have players like. For crying out loud, I'm trying to think of anything that saved my life. I have so much going on, it's hard to kind of peg it down. But you have receivers that have not been utilized. Maybe they were injured. One of our receivers had a broken finger, which kept him sidelined. I mean, heck, throw some tape on it and call it a day and get out there and start catching the ball. As far as the second part of the question, who they're going to acquire in the draft, who they're looking for to get in the draft. Again, these are all sleepers. Every single one of these picks that I've made, other than maybe Denard, which we didn't get. Unfortunately, the Bengals did acquire his services, which I find is going to be quite interesting as far as a matchup downfield this upcoming season with the likes of Antonio Brown. I think he's going to have his hands full in that matchup. But I believe that players like LaDainian Washington is going to be a very vital a vital pick because of his length, because of his physicality, the bump and run. He's got the football IQ. Again, IQ is very important. I think we forget that the football IQ parameters aren't just covered in catching the ball and running, or blocking the ball, blocking from somebody else catching the ball, or a pass rush because that's the position you were put in. It's about IQ. It's understanding the game, the X's and O's, the ins and outs, the do's and don'ts. And I believe that the Steelers are looking for that type of wide receiver, as Ben was promised. And you're right, Ben has carried the load. Make no mistake, this guy's a 2-time Super Bowl winner. Stated recently on Steelers.com that he can play 5, 6, 7 more years. And to be honest with you, he probably could because of his physicality, because of his style of play, because of his football IQ. But without that offensive line, I think in the latter rounds, maybe rounds maybe 5 or 6, we're going to end up pulling in some type of offensive tackle.
Yeah, it'd be a nice housewarming gift for Mike Munchak, the new Steelers offensive line coach. Got to throw him a bone. Rudy Ray is here with us. We want to thank him for being with us here on Black and Gold Central, the interviewer and blogger for 970 ESPN, and a sportscaster on SteelerNationLive.net. Where can we find you, Rudy? On Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram, on the blogosphere? Where where can we find you out there in the social media universe?
I can honestly tell you can find me everywhere. I am on Facebook at radicalhype@yahoo.com or Rude Dog Reyes. You can type that in. I'm on Twitter at Rude Dog Reyes. You can find me at SteelerNationLive.net. Talk with Rudy. Leave me a note. We can chat about the mock draft that I created. You can find me practically everywhere. I'm pretty hard to not miss.
Okay. Well, thank you for coming on with us, Rudy, and we'll talk again soon.
Yeah, it sounds great. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time. And let me know if there's anything else that I can be of assistance with as the draft does come to an end.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. And go Steelers.
Thanks. It was Rudy Reyes here with us on Black and Gold Central. How about that? A guest here on Black and Gold Central. Provided you out there who are offended by my Steelers Hawaiian shirt, well, at least you had a little break from looking at it for a little while there. Talking about Ryan Shazier, the Steelers' first-round pick, it's kind of strange because it's sort of you don't usually get a mixed reaction with a Steelers first-round pick like that. You look, and you're either getting a player who the Steelers expect to pick, or they're in the 20s and they get a player who's expected to go in the top 15 who falls, and then they look brilliant. You get in 2008, Rashard Mendenhall, if you remember, was really expected to go in the top 15. He fell to 23. Steelers got him, and he did help them get to a Super Bowl. In 2012, David DeCastro fell to 24. A lot of people didn't see him getting past 15. So, and then you have, in 2009, the Steelers had the 32nd pick. Everybody thought, a lot of people figured Ziggy Hood, and they got him. In 2011, they had the second to last pick because they lost the Super Bowl, and it was Cameron Hayward, another defensive lineman. Yeah, not the sexiest pick, but that's who a lot of the mock drafts had going to the Steelers. And then, in 2010, the Steelers picked at 18. They needed a center, so Marquise Pouncey wasn't much of a surprise. This year, this was a surprising pick, and sort of a mixed reaction. The Steelers really, wanted a cornerback or even a wide receiver. But, I understand, the need for the front seven. You need to have a front seven who can tackle and get to the quarterback. Otherwise, it doesn't matter who your cornerbacks are. My gut reaction was if they really wanted Ryan Shazier, they didn't need to get him at 15. They could have traded back a few spots and picked up an extra third-round pick in this deep draft. However, in reading the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, it sounded like the Cowboys were ready to pick Shazier at number 16 right after the Steelers. So if they wanted Shazier, they had to get him at 15. So, Ryan Shazier, he has a 42-inch vertical leap. He led all the linebackers at the combine with a 10-foot, 10-inch broad jump. I saw a couple of videos on YouTube of him playing in games this year, and I highly recommend, if you want to really look at a college prospect and see how good he is, avoid the highlight videos that are put out by the school or put out by fans that always invariably seem to have be accompanied by an Eminem song. Look for the ones that say, for example, Ryan Shazier versus Clemson in the Orange Bowl, or Ryan Shazier versus Wisconsin. They'll show every play from that game, the good ones and the bad ones, so you really get a true vision of what this player is like. And a lot of times they'll highlight the player too. And I found two videos of Ryan Shazier in the Orange Bowl against Clemson, and then also in a regular season game against Wisconsin. But I got to be honest, I wasn't too impressed with what I saw against Clemson. He's 6'1", 237 pounds. he seemed to get blocked pretty easily in the game against Clemson in the Orange Bowl, a game Clemson won 40-35. Yeah, I mean, just remember one play where he tried to tackle Sammy Watkins, and Watkins pushed him for a couple of yards before Watkins went down. I was a little more impressed with what I saw in the game against Wisconsin. That was a game Ohio State won 31-24. Saw some splash plays there. So I was kind of a little bit more impressed with what I saw there from Ryan Shazier. But statistically, what is encouraging about Ryan Shazier is that he seemed to improve his productivity every year. 3 sacks in 2011, 5 sacks in 2012, 7 sacks in 2013. Also, in terms of forced fumbles, 2 forced fumbles in 2011, 3 forced fumbles in 2012, 4 forced fumbles in 2013. And he was the leading tackler in the Big Ten with 102 tackles in 2013, and the Steelers just need so much help on defense that really any defensive player they chose isn't it really isn't a bad pick. So it's good they got Shazier. It's something that they were gonna linebacker was something they would have addressed in the later rounds anyway, but now they really go into the second and third round needing help on the defensive line. And also a cornerback. I still think they need to get a cornerback at some point in the early rounds. And, there are a few players here. I have a list of players who I would like to see the Steelers go for today in either round 2 or round 3. Here are the players who I wouldn't mind seeing the Steelers get in round 2. Louis Nix, nose tackle, Notre Dame. Now, if the Steelers have the 46th pick, the 46th overall pick in the second round, the 46th overall pick in the draft in the second round tonight. Now, the Steelers, they play in their sub-packages a majority of the time, so a nose tackle really is a 2-down player. So at 15, it really would not have been a good idea to get a nose tackle, but if Louis Nix gets to number 46, I certainly wouldn't mind seeing the Steelers get him in the second round, because the Steelers need help on the defensive line. They got Cam Thomas, the 330-pound player from the San Diego Chargers, as a free agent, but he was inconsistent, and he ended up losing his starting job at the end of the year. And you really need that big boulder of a human being in the middle of the defensive line in that 3-4 defense. So there's Louis Nix. I would say he's the top player. He should be the top player on the Steelers board today. Allen Robinson, wide receiver from Penn State. He's 6'3", and if you've listened to some of my past shows in recent weeks, 6'3" for me is the cutoff. If the receiver is 6'3" or taller, I think he would fulfill Ben Roethlisberger's wish for a taller receiver. And the best of the bunch, still remaining on the board, I think, is Allen Robinson. I think he's good after the catch. If you look at his videos, he has a knack to be able to catch those low balls that are inches off the ground that need to be confirmed on replay that he really caught the ball. I like that about him. I think he would be a good pick in the second round for the Steelers if he's still there. There's a defensive tackle, Stephon Tuitt. He could have gone in the first round, but he's 6'6", 304 pounds. Potential defensive end there for the Steelers. He's had some injury issues, though. So we'll see if he's even available at 46. And Nix and Robinson are not available. I think Stephon Tuitt should be the Steelers' pick. Rashid Hageman. There's the lightning rod guy right there. I think he should be on the Steelers' board. He's a defensive tackle, a 311-pounder or 310-pounder. he's a boomer or bust guy there. Okay, um, there were games where he would really dominate, but there were also games where he would just completely disappear. He would be a risky pick, but again at 46, he might be a good value there for the Steelers. And I have him at number 4 here on the Steelers board for day 2, which of course encompasses the second and third rounds of the NFL draft. The next guy on my Steelers big board for tonight is Jordan Matthews, wide receiver of Vanderbilt, another 6'3" guy. He's the SEC's all-time leader with 262 receptions and 3,759 receiving yards. He's Jerry Rice's cousin also, so the Steelers would infuse their roster with Jerry Rice's bloodlines there. That's never a bad idea. Although, I mean, there's no guarantee he would be as good as Jerry Rice. But Jordan Matthews, he's a guy who I would love to see the Steelers get at number 46 if he's available. Next is another 6'3" receiver. This one's from Indiana, Cody Latimer, a late riser. He was a mid-round guy a month ago. Now he's rising up the boards. A lot of people thought he could have gone in the first round. He could go in the early second round today, but if I would put him, as far as receivers go, I'd put him third on the Steelers' wish list behind Robinson and Jordan Matthews. But Cody Latimer, I think, would also be a good second-round caliber player for the Steelers. If you look at his video, there was one play where he beat Darqueze Dennard for a touchdown. So now that was only one play, but still, he seems to be a pretty tough guy. Doesn't seem like a soft receiver there, Cody Latimer of Indiana. Now, there are a couple of guys who I don't think are worth. I think they might be a little bit of a reach at number 46. So if the Steelers get them, I'd like to see them maybe trade a few spots back in the second round so that maybe they can get an extra fourth-round pick and get extra picks in this draft. And they're two outside linebackers. One is Carl Bradford of Arizona State, and the other is Kyle Van Noy of Brigham Young. Okay. Now, a pass rushing outside linebacker is something else that the Steelers need. Ryan Shazier, I think, the Steelers said he projects as more of an inside linebacker, somebody to go to be next to Lawrence Timmons there. But you have Jarvis Jones, who had 1 sack last season, and he's still not out of the woods as far as being a bust goes. Steelers need to see a lot more out of him next year. And then you get Jason Worilds, who really had, he came on late last season, but he really only has half a season of really good football under his belt. So the Steelers need, Jason Worilds and Jarvis Jones to, they really need to see more from them, to really be convinced that they're the long-term answers as that outside linebacker tandem. And also they need depth, because the next guy on the depth chart is Chris Carter, and he has no sacks in his career, and he's heading into his 4th season. So now Carl Bradford, he has 21.5 sacks in 3 years, and Kyle Van Noy has 26 sacks in his 4-year career, but he had only 4 last year. So these are guys who I'd like to see, if the Steelers are going to get them, I think a good spot to get them is later in the second round or even the third round. And that brings us, and there's one more guy too, who I think is a good late second round pick or a third round pick. And here's where we start to get into the cornerbacks, and that's Philip Gaines of Rice. Okay, he had 4 he only has 4 interceptions in college, but they all came last year, and he has 38 career passes defensed. And he also started 42 games in college. So basically, I don't think at number 46 in the second round. I know we're all, a lot of people were disappointed that the Steelers didn't get a cornerback in round 1. Well, I don't see them taking one at number 46 either. There aren't any left right now who are good enough to be picked there. But later in the second round and in the third round, I think there are a few. Another guy who I think would be good in the third round for the Steelers, and he's another nose tackle, is Daquan Jones of Penn State, 6'4", 322 pounds. I think he'd be a good third-round pick for the Steelers. The next guy, and this brings us back to the pass rushing outside linebackers, Jeremiah Attachu, outside linebacker of Georgia Tech. He's a senior, and he's another guy like Shazier whose productivity sort of climbed each year in college. He went from 3 sacks as a freshman to 6 sacks as a sophomore to 10 sacks when he was a junior to 12.5 last year. That's Jeremiah Attachu, and he rose up a lot of the draft boards and looked like a second-round pick, a month or so ago or a couple of months ago. But now he's sort of settled down a little bit. His draft stock sort of plateaued there, and I think he'd be a good third-round pick for the Steelers. And that brings us to a couple more cornerbacks. Stanley Jean-Baptiste or Stanley Jean-Baptiste, I should say, if I'm going to use the French pronunciation there. Cornerback of Nebraska. He's 6'3", and the NFL is moving toward bigger cornerbacks here. If you see it's a copycat league, and the Seattle Seahawks, the Super Bowl champions, had some tall cornerbacks. And then Stanley Jean-Baptiste is followed closely by Keith McGill, another 6'3" guy from Utah. But he's 25 years old, and he's a little bit soft against the run. So Jean-Baptiste and McGill, I think they're third-round guys for the Steelers there. Now, and there's one more. I got one more cornerback who I think is a possible pick for the Steelers today, and that's Jalen Watkins of Florida. Okay. Now, obviously, Steelers weren't going to get Sammy Watkins, so I guess the next best thing they could do was get his half brother. And Jalen Watkins is Sammy Watkins' half brother. He wasn't able to consistently win a starting job at Florida, but the thing with him is he's versatile. He could be a jack of all trades, master of none, because he also could line up at safety and play nickel back. So Jalen Watkins would be a third-round prospect for the Steelers, and his teammate Marcus Roberson, I'm going to leave him off the board for the third round because he had some durability issues, and so there are medical red flags there, and I don't like him as a day 2 pick for the Steelers. But one more guy who I wouldn't mind seeing as a day 2 pick is Arkansas outside linebacker Chris Smith, 6'1", 266 pounds. He had 11.5 tackles for loss last year, and he had 8.5 sacks. And for his career, he had 30.5 tackles for loss and 21.5 sacks. Again, another pass rushing outside linebacker. And at least the Steelers are off to a good start here. At least in terms of making this a defensive-themed draft. Their first guy is a defensive player, Ryan Shazier, and so we'll see what they do with their remaining 8 picks. And of course, the Steelers don't pick until in the third round until the 33rd pick, and they have that compensatory pick, number 97, and then before that, they pick at number 46 in the second round. So it'll be 2 picks today for the Steelers, unless they pull off a trade where that could be different. And the second day of the NFL draft begins tonight at 7 o'clock. We have 2 more picks for the Steelers, and then it concludes with the 4th through 7th rounds tomorrow, and that starts at noon. The Steelers really have, during the Kevin Colbert era, when he's now their general manager, but he became their director of football operations in 2000. The Steelers really, even though the jury is still out on Jarvis Jones, and David DeCastro for that matter, but the Steelers really haven't drafted a bust in the first round really since 2000, when Kevin Colbert took over. And this really isn't the year to start. However, there have been some misses in the second and third round. Their most infamous being Limas Swede in the second round, and UCLA linebacker Bruce Davis in the third round back in 2008. You had Alonzo Jackson, who was a second-round pick, earlier in the decade. I think that would have been 2004. I have it right here, actually, because I want to be accurate. Alonzo Jackson was the Steelers' second-round pick in 2003, actually. A linebacker, really didn't pan out. Then you go to Ricardo Coakley. We talked with Rudy Reyes about, he talked about the Steelers possibly taking a Division II cornerback in the second round. Well, that's what they did in 2004, and Coakley turned out to be a bust. Willie Reed, third-round receiver in 2006, and an infamous one, a third-round safety, Anthony Smith, in 2006, ultimately turned out to really not pan out. And you have, let's see, well, then it gets a little bit, Curtis Brown in the third round in 2011. Steelers released him this offseason, so you could definitely say without reservation that he's been a bust. The second-round pick to Mike Adams in 2012. We still have to wait and see with him. And Marcus Wheaton, we really didn't get a good look at him because he had injuries. But he was the Steelers' third-round pick in 2013. So he really, hopefully, will have a chance to show what he can do next year. So the Steelers really, they have a good record with their first-round picks since 2000, since the turn of the century. But they really need to do better with their second and third-round picks. And the time for them to do that is tonight. We want to thank you for listening here on Black and Gold Central. We'll be back next week to talk about the entire draft and maybe some undrafted free agents. We want to thank Rudy Reyes, of course, from 970 ESPN and SteelerNationLive.net. We want to thank him for being with us on the show today. And you can follow Black and Gold Central on Twitter at BNG Central. You can follow me at Steel Tweets, that's Steel_tweets, and you can see some of my writing at the Sports Daily, and on Twitter, that's Sports Daily Blog, and then also on Steeler Addicts. And you can log on to Steeler Addicts, and you can follow Steeler Addicts also on Twitter. Thank you for listening, and we'll be back next week.